Bonjour, this is Florence again, and I'm back today for another staple of French cuisine, which is the stuffed tomatoes, or what we call les tomates farcies. So just to explain to you what this is big tomatoes preferably, and this is more like a summer dish just because normally around this time of year, this is about June right now, June, July, August, this is the time where tomatoes will grow in France. And we can get very nice, big, ripe tomatoes. And we're gonna stuff them with sausages. In France, we normally get sausage meat that you can just buy at the butcher's. Here, I just buy sausages. I'm gonna show you how you can open them and take out the meat, make a mix, and stuff the tomatoes with it. So, obviously what you're gonna need is some big tomatoes. For the sake of the space that I have here, and so that it's a little bit clear for everybody, I'm gonna leave the sausages out for now, and then when it's time to actually make the stuffing, I'll bring all the stuff that you need. But just so you know, you will need the sausages, and then you will need some greens. It could be some kind of mixed greens or spinach or whatever you like. And a little bit of bread. You can also have other seasoning. We'll talk about this when we get to the actual making of the stuffing. It's going to be to your taste. Normally sausages are already seasoned, so I don't really bother adding anything else, and I make a mix of different types of sausages so that I have a stuffing that tastes good, and I don't have to really think of making a new seasoning for it, and that for me is a bit easier. So what we're gonna need to start is two big dishes. I bought quite a few tomatoes. Normally they don't fit in just the one dish, so I have these two big dishes that go in the oven. The stuffed tomatoes are made in the oven. And I also have a little container here. I'm going to show you why, because I want to save some of the tomatoes that we're going to use. Some of it will be saved for later to do something else with, and some of it will actually go in the dish to add to the juice. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start with the cutting of the tomatoes and how to make a hole in the tomatoes so that you can stuff the tomatoes. Okay, so the first step is going to open the tomatoes, take a little bit from the inside to make a hole. Keep the little top because we're going to make a little lid on the tomatoes, and that's what the first thing that you want to do, and you're going to see why afterwards, because we want to finish with the stuffing, and it's better to do all the stuffing part afterwards. So I have here a bunch of pretty big tomatoes. It's not always very easy to find big tomatoes. Personally, I prefer to make this dish with bigger tomatoes, but you can also do it with smaller ones. You would just stuff them with a little bit less, and you'll have more little tomatoes rather than less big ones, okay? Obviously. So the first thing we want to do, these tomatoes were washed, by the way. You do want to wash the tomatoes before. Here we have a few little stickers, which is a little bit annoying because that means I'm going to have to take that off, but that's kind of the way it is. All right, and you want to sort of take away that little bit in the middle, especially if there's a bit of green. Okay, and there you are. And what you want to do is first you want to kind of cut the head of the tomato. Just about this much. And for now, you're going to put it on the side in your dish. You'll see we're going to use these a little bit later. And this part, this is where I'm going to have my little container here. You want to sort of cut a circle inside the tomato, like this, to remove as much of the pulp as possible. Now you want to be careful not to go too deep, because you might draw a hole, and you want to try to avoid that, and also be careful because if your fingers are under, you're going to hurt yourself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this pulp aside, and I'm going to use part of it to actually put in the dish afterwards when it's cooked, because that way you get a little bit more juice, and it's actually very nice. The juice that you get from the stuffed tomatoes tastes really good, and you can even use it for soup or something like that. So the more pulp you have, the better it's going to be. And here you have a very well emptied tomato. This is kind of what you're looking for. And the idea, just so you know, we're gonna do all the other tomatoes, obviously. And then at the end, once the stuffing is in there, we're gonna put this on the top. So it's kind of a little hat for each of the tomatoes. And I'm gonna do that with the next ones. All right, and of course, we're gonna do this again with the next tomato. So I always like to take away the little bit in the middle. Always check that the tomatoes are all good. Sometimes I buy some and they're a little bit damaged, so make sure that there's nothing too soft because you don't really want that. And again, we make our little circle along the rim of the tomato, and it comes out quite easily. And then you always have, like the first time you have a little bit that's sort of more like a little crater, but you want to even it out a little bit more so that you can put more meat inside of the tomato. So that's what we do. And you'll see that this is a fairly cheap dish, and it is a little bit time consuming to make, but it does freeze really, really well. And so what that means is that you can make more than you need, freeze it, and get it back out later. I find that for when you go to work, for instance, it's a very easy lunch to bring. I used to just like pick it up from the freezer and then just leave it up until it was time to warm up in the microwave. It warms up very easily. And it's very, very good. So I'm just gonna do a couple more, and then for the sake of our sanity and so that you don't get too bored, I'm not gonna show you how to make all the tomatoes because it's kind of the same repeated system every time. So again, we take out our little lid here, put it aside, and here we go. And once you've done it a few times, you'll see that it's fairly easy and it goes pretty fast. And there. So these tomatoes are quite big, which means that we're going to be able to put quite a bit of meat in them. So it's really a pretty rich dish. I mean, it will have greens also, so it's fairly balanced. And depending on how people eat in your family, you might count one or two. But once you've had one, it's pretty good already. Especially if you're eating something else with it. But if that's all you're eating, I would say two is probably a normal portion. And then teenagers or very hungry people might easily eat three if that's all you're eating. So again, I'm keeping my lids to the side, and one more. Oh, this one is a little bit harder to do. I think I didn't go around very well. There we are. It's the middle part sometimes that doesn't come out very easily. And if you didn't manage to get very big tomatoes, it's okay. It's not, it's not a disaster. Just looking, I think there's a bit of this tomato that's not very good. So let me just double check. Yeah, I think it was starting to go bad there. So I'm actually gonna take off the bottom here. I'm not sure I'm gonna use this for the stuffing because now it has a hole. So I think I maybe use something to fill it up. So that's another way to use your little bits here. If you see that you have a little bit of the tomato that has a hole or something for some reason, I just restuff it with that and it kind of works the same. Let's not throw things away. So here we go. I think I've done 4. I have a few more to do. I'm going to carry on and I'll come back to you when all of this is done and I'll show you how to make the stuffing. All right, so we're back now for the fun part, the making of the stuffing. So for that, I've actually got my gloves on. It's always a little bit better. What I have also is a big dish full of greens. So here is just spinach, just rinsed fresh spinach. You can use, sometimes I use mixed greens, you can use celery, you can use, whatever you would like. This is the kind of dish where you can really just invent things and make it to your taste. You can play around with it. The first time you can try something. If you think it's missing something, just add, whatever. As long as it's something that will cook okay in the oven. Okay, so what we're gonna want to do, what we're gonna want to add afterwards also is gonna be obviously the sausage meat and some bread. So I have here 4 slices of any random sliced bread. It could be whole wheat, it could be anything. If you happen to have some leftover French bread that started to get old, when French bread gets old, it kind of like gets a little bit harder and a little bit drier. That's actually very good to mix with that. That's perfect. In France, that's what I would do. I don't always have French bread, and when I have it, I kind of prefer to eat it. And on the side here, I have my tomatoes and all the leftover my tomatoes. It actually ended up being only one dish because I had a couple of tomatoes that were bad, so that's sad. So what we're gonna do next is get the meat out of the sausage. All right, so here what I have is actually, I like to mix the different flavors. I don't always like to have just the one type of sausage because I just think maybe hot sausages are too hot or mild sausages are too mild. So here I have, what I happen to find when I'm chopping, which is some hot sausages, some regular bratwurst and some beer brats, okay? So you can choose whatever you prefer. You can also do it with, it could be with turkey, with any other type of meat if you don't like this type of sausages, okay? So what you're gonna want to do now, here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 5 here. So I have 15 sausages. That's actually quite a lot. I'm probably gonna have too much stuffing for what I want to do, but as I say, it freezes really well. So what I've done before, if I happen to have too much stuffing, I just stick it in a Ziploc bag and I put it in the freezer and I use it another time when I have tomatoes, and that way it's just very easy to make, okay? But for now, here's what we do with the stuffing. So what you want to do is grab one of the sausage, and on the side you just want to do a little incision. It's almost like being a surgeon. And then here you'll see there's a skin around the sausage. And what you want to do is get that skin out, and it's that simple. So this is a sausage with the skin, and you just stick it on top of your green, and that skin, we're just gonna throw it away, so we put it back here. So I'm gonna make my mix with all the sausages. You'll see it's very simple. It doesn't take that long, and I'm gonna do these first. And I put them in different places because afterwards the part that's a little bit harder is to actually mix it well so that the greens are mixed with the meat, because it's not always easy. I also recommend to get the sausages out of the fridge a little bit before you actually start making the tomatoes and everything, because otherwise it's very, very cold, and after a while your fingers get very cold doing this, and you're gonna have to actually mix it all together. So if it's cold, it makes it a little bit worse, even if you have gloves. So you get the gist. You see how easy it is. Again, I've done it before, but my knife is not even a great knife, but it's a very thin skin that's on the sausage, and it's super, super easy to take out. So here we have the hot sausages. So again, sausages are usually, when you buy them, they're usually already seasoned. So that means that you have to go with the seasoning that's there, which is why I like mixing different type of sausages. You can also, I guess if you have a local butcher that can do that, you can just get sausage meat that's maybe less seasoned. I don't know. I found that you can buy just the meat that's inside of the sausage, but it comes to being more expensive than just buying sausages. And then you're kind of stuck with, it's only like one flavor. So I normally prefer to buy sausages. It doesn't take long to open them, and get the meat out. So I do that. It's kind of, you know, it's fun. It's therapeutic. You can kind of meditate as you do this. It's very repetitive and it's quite simple. So, like, I've got 6 more to do. It's very quick. If you're bored at this point, you can fast forward to the point where I start sticking my hand in the dish, because that means that we'll do the mixing. If you know the type of sausages that you're using, and if you know that you like the seasoning, I would say don't add anything if you like them. If you've had them before and you think that, you know, they should be more salty or they should be more pepper, or if you think there's something missing, then you know, so do it. If not, as I say, I think it's something that you can play around with. It's a dish. You'll try it one time and then you'll think, you know, I like it like that, or I think I will add a bit more of cayenne pepper or something, you know, just to have a little bit more spice to it if you want to. With the stuffing, you can also play around with it and add like different things. One of the last time I made stuffed tomatoes, I decided to put walnuts in the stuffing. It was quite good. It made it a little bit thicker and it gave it a good taste. So that's, you know, something you can do. I would say, you know, maybe some type of cheese, you might want to try that. There's a lot of things that you can do with the stuffed tomatoes, les tomates farcies. And that's my last sausage, so that's fantastic. So you see, it doesn't take very long to make. When I stopped making the tomatoes, I think that probably is what takes a little bit longer, because you have to be a bit careful what you do, but you know, it's not a super long dish to prepare. All right, so I'm gonna try not to make too much of my bracelet. So these things, that's it, we're done. We can leave them here, throw them away later. So what you want to do now, you have your sausages on top of the greens, and what you want to do is really mix the greens very well with the sausages. So usually I just grab the meat like this, and that's it. You just mix it together, and then little by little you just grab a few greens and you insert it. Now it looks like it's big, but remember that spinach really shrinks when it cooks. So the minute you're going to put it in the oven, it's going to really shrink. And when you have your stuffed tomatoes, you won't even see the green sticking out. It'll be there kind of melted within the meat, and it kind of adds to the juice. So it's very good. But it's going to be a lot smaller when it's cooked in reality. So I'm going to do this for a little while, up until everything is well mixed. And after that, I will add my little bits of bread. So it's starting to take shape. You see, like already I have more like of a green and pink bowl of mixed greens and the sausage meat. There. You have to go well at the bottom of the dish to find all the spinach that's there. There it goes, getting a bit more compact. Oh, I'm losing my gloves. Let me just readjust the gloves. They're a bit big, these gloves. They're not my normal cooking gloves, and at the moment I can't find them because there's not many gloves in the stores at the moment. So this will have to do. Right. I'm almost done. I see there's still a few bits that are not mixed, but we're getting there. There. Okay, so at this point I'm almost done with mixing all the greens. So what I'm going to do to sort of make life easier, I'm going to start inserting the bits of bread. There. So I just take the slices of bread. So each slice I just cut it in little pieces like this. It doesn't really matter. So what that does, I guess it sort of like soaks up a little bit of the juice, and it adds to the the consistency of the stuffing. So it's very good. In France, we like to stuff things mostly with meat. So even when if we stuff a turkey, we often stuff it with something similar to this. And so it's normal to put bread in it too. And as we normally have fresh bread every day, any bread that's kind of left over that is not as good when it's not fresh, we don't really like to waste, so we make sure that it's included in other dishes, which is good, and that kind of explains why there's a lot of bread in a lot of the things that we make. So I think that's almost done. Right. So here you have like a sort of well compacted mix. Like if I grab a bit, you see you have, I can show you, like you have a bit of the, like here the bread is not very well mixed, so I'm going to move it a little bit, but you want to be able to just grab it like this and you see that it's all mixed with the greens and with the bread. And as I go along and as I fill my tomatoes with the meat, if I realize that there's, you know, one spot that only has meat, for instance, not enough green, I just kind of remix it and that works. Okay, so we're about done here, and what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna switch my gloves because they're just really too big, and once they move it's really hot, but I'm gonna get new ones to finish the stuffing, so I will be back in 1 second once I've removed my gloves. Here I am, we have the stuffing ready, and what we're gonna do, I'm gonna switch this so we can see a little bit better. Oh, there's a bit that fell, so let's not waste. All right, so our stuffing is done. We have our tomatoes here, and we have our little leftover of tomatoes that I'm going to show you what to do. So I have my one dish, and I actually have 9 tomatoes, very big, all ready to be stuffed. And so what we're going to do, and at this point you probably want to preheat your oven at 450, and it's going to take 45 minutes to cook. And really, I've made it several times with different ovens, and it's really, that's what you need, and it works every time. So what I'll do is I'm just kind of finalizing the stuffing, and what you want to do, you look at the size of your tomatoes. So here I have one that's a little bit smaller than the others, and if you see, this one is a lot bigger. So obviously I'm going to stuff with less amount when it's smaller. So I'm going to start with a small one. I want to grab a piece of meat that I'm going to make into a ball like this. I want to make sure that it has a little bit of everything. This one doesn't have a lot of bread, so I'm going to grab a little piece of bread to make sure that it has some. There we go. And I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put a little bit more because that's not a lot. There. So we have one stuffed tomato. You want it to kind of stick out a little bit. Probably about 1/3 to half of the height of your tomato. Okay, and you press it in, and then you're going to do the same with the next one. So this one that I showed you after is much bigger, so I'm going to make a bowl that's much bigger. This one has a little bit of everything, so I just put it here, and here we go. That's a nicely stuffed tomato. Okay, and I'm going to do that 7 more times. And I think I was right, there's probably a little bit more stuffing than I needed, but that's okay. So here, this one is another big one. So I'm gonna put it here, there, spread it well. Okay. Then I'm gonna grab, this one is a bit smaller, so I'm gonna put it like this, there. Here we have this one is not big kind of in diameter, but it's kind of deeper. So I'm gonna do the same thing. There. Okay. I've got 4 more. This one is little one-ish. It's a bit bigger than that, so take a little bit more. Right, very nice. It's all looking very good. Now, of course, if you love meat, you can put a lot more. It's all up to you, really. There'll just be less tomato. The other thing that I wanted to say is that this is actually also very good with stuffed peppers. It actually took me a while recently to find big tomatoes that I wanted to use for stuffing, because really the small ones, it's a little bit harder to make, and I just don't think they're as fun to eat as the bigger ones. But recently I wasn't able to find enough of the big tomatoes that I wanted, and so I bought some different color peppers. And you just remove the inside of the pepper, like the sort of bits that stick out. The pepper is actually very easy to make, and then you stuff them exactly the same way. The difference is that it's not usually as juicy. The tomatoes have definitely more juice, but if you mix them with a few tomatoes, it's actually quite good, because you end up with like a nice little sauce that's very, very nice to eat. So let me see, these I think are good. I maybe add a little bit to this one because it's a little bit smaller. And I think my dish is pretty good. So as I said, I have a little bit left. So this is what I've got left, and I'll just freeze it and use it next time I want to make stuffed tomatoes. That's really not a problem. Now, our little lids, if you remember, I said we're going to keep the little lid. So what we're going to do, we're going to cover our tomatoes with a lid that, you know, hopefully is the right one, but you can kind of have an idea with the size of the tomato. So we put the little hat back on. This one is one of the smaller ones, so it's probably this one. If it's not the exact same one, obviously it doesn't really matter. This one is good. It smells good. Let me see. This one here. This one is actually, this one probably goes here. That's better. There. And then I have this one and this one. That's perfect. And what do I have left? This one here probably, and there. So we have nice little tomatoes. They almost look as they started. And what I like to do is get a little bit of the pulp and cut it in smaller bits like this. And I'm going to put it in the side in the middle, so it creates a little bit more juice. With the sausage, you get quite a bit of meat juice, so it's good to mix it with the vegetables. And you will get a little bit of the water of the spinach also. And it usually creates quite a bit of sort of sauce at the bottom. And what I normally do, if I'm not eating the tomatoes right away, which happens, I often make them for the next day. If you find that the sauce is a little bit greasy, if you just leave the tomatoes overnight in the fridge, you'll see that there's a little layer of fat that will appear. You can remove that, so that way your juice is a little healthier. And if you have too much, it's very, very good to put in a soup. You can put it in any kind of soup that you like with, I did a few veggies, and it gives it a very, very nice taste. So that's about it, I think. Maybe a tiny bit more. Now, what you're gonna find is that you have a lot. You can put a bit more if you want to, but I don't want to overdo it. This leftover tomato, please don't throw it away. Make something else with it. I'm probably gonna make it in some eggs tomorrow morning or something like that. And that's it. So here's our dish. I think it looks pretty good. It's pretty heavy. I think it's going to feed a few people. And what I'm going to do now is stick it in the oven for 45 minutes at 450 degrees. And I will come back to show you what it looks like at the end. All right, and we're back. We're just in time to get the tomatoes out of the oven. So it's been 45 minutes. Let me get these. There we go. My glasses have steamed up a little bit. And we have beautiful stuffed tomatoes. Let me close the oven. So here we are. This is our dish. They look very nice. You see that the top of the tomato is a little bit sort of grilled. If you want to be sure, you can cut one of the tomatoes and check inside to make sure that all the meat is cooked. I'm used to it. I know that 450 for 45 minutes, it always works, whatever the size, even for bigger tomatoes. If you make smaller, if you happen to only find very small tomatoes, and you want to, you have to put them in the oven, you might check after maybe half an hour, and maybe they'll be good enough. But as a rule, 45 minutes really work, and that's it. And this is a delicious dish. I hope you enjoy it. Please write some comments and let us know if you like them. And please subscribe to the channel. I will always add some new French recipes. Easy to make, not too time consuming, so that you can make great food for you and your family. Bye bye, take care, au revoir.